June 12, 2001. St. Mary's Cathedral, Middlesbrough. In another timeline, one that runs parallel to ours, separated by a surgeon's skill and a heartbeat, this is the day Chris Rea was buried. The cathedral is full. Not stadium full, not rockstar full, but respectably full. Friends, family, musicians who knew him. The people of Middlesbrough, claiming their son who'd made it out but never forgot where he came from. Full, if you think it's over, plays softly as mourners file past the casket. Then On the Beach. Then Road to Hell. His greatest hits. The only Chris Rea most people know. The eulogies are heartfelt. A talented musician. Taken too soon. His music will live forever. His daughter cries. His wife Joan sits rigid, hollow-eyed. She's been crying for 18 months, since the diagnosis. Now there are no tears left. The music industry sends flowers. Warner Music releases a statement, "We've lost a true artist." MTV plays Road to Hell on rotation for 3 days. Radio stations do Chris Rea weekend tributes. And then, as always happens, the world moves on. Within a month, his albums drop off the charts. Within 6 months, radio stations stop playing him except on 80s throwback hours. Within a year, he's a trivia question, remember that guy who sang Road to Hell? This is the timeline where Chris Rea died at 50. This is the timeline where pancreatic cancer won. And this is the timeline where 137 songs were never written. But we don't live in that timeline. We live in the one where he survived. Where he kept creating. Where he gave us 24 more years and 6 more albums. This is the story of what we almost lost. The ghost albums that haunt the space between life and death. In our timeline, Chris Rea's last album before his cancer diagnosis was King of the Beach, 2000. It's a solid album. Not his best, not his worst. Songs about roads and beaches and the usual Chris Rea themes. It sold modestly. Critics gave it lukewarm reviews, more of the same from Chris Rea. Nobody knew it was almost his final statement. But in the alternate timeline, the one where he died in June 2001, King of the Beach is his final album. And suddenly, it means something different. Those songs about roads? They're about mortality. About running out of time. Those songs about beaches? They're about the final shore. The last horizon. The last open road isn't just a travel song anymore. It's prophetic. It's his goodbye. Music critics in that timeline write retrospectives. In hindsight, King of the Beach reads as Chris Rea's meditation on death. He knew. He didn't know. He was just writing what he always wrote. But death gives meaning to everything retroactively. Fans in that timeline treat King of the Beach like In Utero or Black Star, a final transmission from an artist who knew the end was near. It becomes sacred. Untouchable. The last Chris Rea album. And that's all there would ever be. In the alternate timeline, the years 2001 to 2005 are silent. No new Chris Rea albums. Just the slow fade of memory. Greatest hits compilations released by Warner Music to milk the catalog. Tribute albums by lesser-known artists. The usual post-death industry machinery. His studio in his home, the room where he wrote and recorded, sits empty. His guitars gather dust. His paintings line the walls, unfinished. Joan can't bring herself to touch any of it. It's too painful. His daughter visits sometimes, sits in his chair, tries to feel his presence. But he's gone. And with him, the music. Nobody knows what songs died with him. What melodies vanished into the silence. What lyrics were never written down. In our timeline, these years saw Chris Rea's most ambitious project, Blue Guitars. 11 CDs, 137 songs. Each one paired with a painting. His magnum opus. In the alternate timeline, Blue Guitars doesn't exist. Those 137 songs were never written. Never recorded. Never heard. They are ghost songs. Echoes of what could have been. Let's imagine for a moment that we could see into that other timeline. That we could glimpse the ghost albums, the music that Chris Rea would have made if he'd survived. Blue Guitars, 2005, would have been different in fundamental ways. What it would have been? An 11-CD box set exploring every shade of the blues. Not just musical blues, emotional blues. Each color representing a different state of being. Turquoise, the peaceful blues. The blues of acceptance. Navy, the deep sorrowful blues. The blues of loss. Sky, the hopeful blues. The blues of possibility. Midnight, the 3 a.m. blues. The blues of loneliness. Cobalt, the industrial blues. The blues of working class struggle. And on, through 11 different shades. Each album would have been accompanied by paintings, Chris Rea's visual representations of the music. Blues as color. Sound as image. What we would have lost. Without this album, we would have lost 137 of the most honest, vulnerable songs Chris Rea ever wrote. The sound of a man recording while in physical pain, which gave the music an honesty he'd never achieved before. His paintings, hundreds of them, visual art that came from the same creative wellspring as the music. The concept itself, that blues isn't one thing but a spectrum, a rainbow of human emotion. The alternate timeline impact. In the world where Chris Rea died in 2001, nobody knows what Blue Guitars could have been. Nobody misses it because they never knew it was possible. But in our timeline, we have it. All 137 songs. All the paintings. The complete vision. And most people still don't appreciate it. It sold modestly. Radio ignored it. Critics called it self-indulgent and uncommercial. Only a small group of dedicated fans understood what they were hearing, a man's life work, distilled into sound and color. We almost lost this. In our timeline, Chris Rea followed Blue Guitars with another massive project, the return of the fabulous Hofner Blue Notes, 2008. Another exploration of blues. More paintings. More songs that most people would never hear. In the alternate timeline, this album is a ghost. What it would have been. A continuation of the Blue Guitars concept. More shades. More textures. Chris Rea diving deeper into the blues, finding new colors nobody had thought to look for. Songs about the morning after blues. The Sunday afternoon blues. The driving home blues. The sitting in silence blues. Mundane moments elevated to art. Ordinary life made profound. What we would have lost. The realization that blues isn't just about pain and suffering. It's about existence itself. About being human and aware and mortal. Chris Rea at 60, still exploring, still curious, still refusing to repeat himself. The alternate timeline. In 2008, 7 years after Chris Rea's death, the music world has mostly forgotten him. He's a nostalgia act. An I love the 80s reference. Nobody's thinking about what new music he might have made. That possibility died with him. But we know better. Because we heard it. We have the album they never got. 10 years after the diagnosis that should have killed him, Chris Rea released Santo Spirito Blues, 2011. It's an album about spirituality. About finding meaning. About the 10 years he wasn't supposed to have. In the alternate timeline, this album haunts the silence like a prayer and never spoken. What it would have been. Chris Rea at 60, contemplating mortality from the other side. Not as someone dying, but as someone who should have died and didn't. Songs about borrowed time. Second chances. The strange guilt of surviving. Looking back at the life you almost lost. It would have been his most philosophical album. His most introspective. What we would have lost. The perspective of someone who's died and come back. Who's seen the end and turned around. There are very few artists who've lived long enough after a terminal diagnosis to process what that means. Chris Rea was one of them. Without this album, that perspective, that voice, would be lost. The mathematics of loss. 3 albums. Approximately 200 songs total. Hundreds of paintings. Thousands of hours of work. Gone. Vanished. Never existed. And nobody in that alternate timeline knows what they're missing. After 2011, Chris Rea released 3 more albums in our timeline. La Passion Revisited, 2014, returning to his Ferrari obsession. Road Songs for Lovers, 2017, Love Songs at 66. These are quieter albums. Smaller. Not for the world, but for himself. In the alternate timeline, these are the most painful ghosts. Why these matter most? Because by 2014, in the timeline where Chris Rea lived, he'd stopped caring about commercial success. About industry approval. About any of it. He was making music because he loved making music. Because he was alive to do it. La Passion Revisited wasn't about redemption or proving anything. It was about returning to a passion project from 20 years earlier and saying, I'm still here. I'm still interested in this. Road Songs for Lovers was an elderly man writing love songs. Simple, unadorned, honest. What we would have lost. The proof that art doesn't need ambition. That creativity at 70 is as valid as creativity at 20. That making small, personal things for small, personal reasons is enough. These albums sold almost nothing. Radio didn't play them. Critics mostly ignored them. But they exist. And in existing, they prove something important. Creating is its own reward. Chris Rea didn't make these albums to be famous or successful. He made them because making them was better than not making them. And in the alternate timeline, that lesson, that proof, doesn't exist. Albums are recorded objects. Fixed in time. But concerts are living things. Moments that exist once and then vanish. In our timeline, Chris Rea continued touring after his recovery. Small venues. Theatre shows. 90-minute sets followed by 3 days of rest. In the alternate timeline, all of those concerts are ghosts. What we lost. Approximately 200 concerts between 2006 to 2024. Thousands of fans who saw him live and were inspired. The moments where he connected with audiences. The improvised solos, the jokes between songs, the human connection. A specific ghost concert. London, 2015. A small theatre. Maybe 500 people. Chris Rea, thin and fragile looking but with steady hands, plays Road to Hell like he's never played it before. Slower. More deliberate. Every note chosen carefully because he knows, everyone in that room knows, that each performance might be the last. A woman in the audience is undergoing chemotherapy for breast cancer. She's 50. Stage 3. Doctors give her 60/40 odds. She hears Chris Rea play. Sees him at 73, still creating, still performing. Still here. It gives her hope. Not false hope, medical hope. The belief that survival is possible. She survives. She's alive today. In the alternate timeline, that concert never happened. Chris Rea was buried 14 years earlier. Did that woman survive without seeing him? Maybe. Maybe not. But she didn't get that moment. That proof. That example. How many moments like that didn't happen in the other timeline? In our timeline, there's a generation of young musicians, born in the 2000s, who discovered Chris Rea through YouTube recommendations or Spotify algorithms. They found blue guitars. They were blown away, wait, this guy made 11 CDs of blues. They found the story of his survival. They were inspired, he kept creating even when dying. Some of them became musicians because of him. Not famous ones, Chris Rea's influence doesn't work that way. But working musicians. Honest ones. Blues players in small clubs. Painters who also play guitar. In the alternate timeline, this chain of influence never starts. The ripple effect we almost lost. Sarah, 28, discovered Chris Rea during her own cancer treatment. His story gave her strength. She survived. She now plays guitar in a jazz trio in Portland. James, 32, heard blue guitars in 2020 during lockdown. It taught him that making a massive, uncommercial project just because you want to is valid. He spent 2 years making an album nobody asked for. It's beautiful. Maria, 25, is a painter who was struggling to understand her relationship with music. Then she found Chris Rea's paintings. She realized, you don't have to choose. You can do both. None of these people exist in their current form in the alternate timeline. The Chris Rea who influenced them died before they were born. The ghost albums they never heard can't inspire them. The chain breaks. In the alternate timeline, Joan Rea is 78 years old. She's been a widow for 24 years. She lives in the same house. Chris's studio remains untouched. A shrine to what was. She doesn't listen to his music anymore. It hurts too much. Especially the last album, King of the Beach. Hearing his voice feels like ghosts. Their daughter has children now. Grandchildren who never knew their grandfather. They know him only through stories and old CDs. Grandpa was a musician, Joan tells them. He was very talented. They nod politely. But he's an abstraction to them. A name. A voice on recordings. In our timeline. Chris Rea is 74. He still paints. Still plays guitar occasionally. He's frail, moves slowly, but he's here. His grandchildren know him. Not as the musician but as grandpa. Who tells stories? Who smells like oil paint and old leather? Who plays them simple songs on acoustic guitar? They'll grow up with those memories. Real ones. Not ghosts. What death steals? Not just the person, but all the future moments. All the conversations. All the ordinary days that accumulate into a life. In the alternate timeline, Chris Rea's family lost 24 years of him. 24 Christmases. 24 birthdays. 24 summers. And 6 albums. And 137 songs. And hundreds of paintings. All gone into the silence. It's 2025 in both timelines. Let's compare them. Timeline A, where he died. Chris Rea has been dead for 24 years. He's remembered, if at all, as the Road to Hell guy. An 80s to 90s artist. A footnote. His Wikipedia page is 2 paragraphs long. His music occasionally appears in I Love the 80s compilations. Music historians note his promising career cut short by tragedy. His total recorded output, 12 studio albums, ending with King of the Beach, 2000. His influence, minimal. A few musicians mention him as an influence, but mostly he's forgotten. His legacy, that blues guy from the 80s. Timeline B, where he lived, our timeline. Chris Rea is 74. Still alive. Still creating. His total recorded output, 18 studio albums, including the massive Blue Guitars project. His influence, a cult following of dedicated fans. Young musicians who discovered him recently and were changed by his work ethic and integrity. His legacy, the man who wouldn't quit. Who kept creating even when everyone said it was over. The difference. 6 albums. Hundreds of songs. 24 years of life. And the example he set, that survival is possible. That creation after crisis is possible. That you can be 74 and still have work to do. In Timeline A, none of that exists. Just a name. A few hit songs. And silence. Here's what we need to understand. We live in timeline B by accident. Chris Rea surviving pancreatic cancer was statistically impossible. The surgeries could have killed him. The cancer could have come back. 100 different things could have gone wrong. But they didn't. And because they didn't, we got Blue Guitars, 137 songs. The return of the fabulous Hofner Blue Notes. Santo Spirito Blues. La Passion Revisited. Road Songs for Lovers. 24 more years of concerts. The inspiration he provided to cancer patients. The example he set for elderly artists. The proof that work can keep you alive. None of this was guaranteed. All of it almost didn't happen. The question: do you appreciate it? Do you know what you have? Or are you like the people in Timeline A, who lost it all and never knew what they were missing? Chris Rea is 74 years old. He's survived 25 years past his expiration date. But he's not immortal. Someday, hopefully not soon, but someday, there will be a final album. A final painting. A final concert. And when that day comes, we'll move from Timeline B, where he lived, into Timeline C, where we remember the albums that might still come. We don't know what Chris Rea might still create. What songs are still in him? What paintings he hasn't painted yet? Maybe there's another Blue Guitars. A Blue Guitars Part 2. More colors. More shades. Maybe there's a final statement. A summation. The album that makes sense of everything. Or maybe he's done. Maybe Road Songs for Lovers was his last word. We don't know. But we do know this. Every album from here on out is a gift we didn't earn and don't deserve. Because he should have died in 2001. The statistics said so. The doctors said so. Biology said so. But he refused. And kept creating. And gave us 24 more years. How do we thank him for that? Go listen to Blue Guitars. All 11 CDs. All 137 songs. And while you listen, remember, this almost didn't exist. In another timeline, one separated from ours by a surgeon's skill and a patient's will, these songs are ghosts. Silent. Unheard. Lost. But in our timeline, we have them. We have the gift of Chris Rea's survival. His refusal to quit. His stubborn insistence that he had more work to do. This is not a story about what we lost. This is a story about what we almost lost, and didn't. Because Chris Rea survived. Against all odds. Against all statistics. Against nature itself. And because he survived, we got the music. The art. The example. The proof. That's not nothing. That's everything. This story is speculative fiction based on statistical reality. Chris Rea's survival was medically improbable. In the vast majority of parallel universes, if such things exist, he died in 2001. But we got lucky. We live in the timeline where he didn't. And that means we have responsibilities. Listen to the music. Especially the stuff that came after 2005. Because it almost didn't exist. Appreciate the example. His survival wasn't just medical. It was creative. He lived because he had work to do. Share the story. Because everyone facing impossible odds needs to know, sometimes, the impossible happens. Chris Rea shouldn't be alive. But he is. And because he is, we have 137 songs we were never supposed to hear. That's a miracle. Don't waste it.